Good morning. Who are you? That was an important part of a movie that was put out recently when a man was asking another man repeatedly, who are you? Trying to get the man to answer, to get to the bottom core understanding of who he was. And if I asked myself the question today, Ray, who are you? Then I'm going to start saying what I believe about my life and how I define myself in this life, and how I live my life and how I relate to others and how I relate to God personally in my life. So many times on Facebook, people refer to me as a bird watcher. I get kind of tickled. That's one of the reasons I scroll in this gallery of photographs behind me, because a bird watcher is not how I see myself as a lifestyle, because a lot of what I'm doing right now is I do observe birds and photograph them because I'm at home a lot because of the coronavirus and because of physical limitations and other things involved. So I'm not traveling and climbing mountains and going after mountain lions anymore and big white-tailed deer or anything else. I'm pretty well stuck at home. And so, but that part of my life kind of defines me right now. But we have to be careful that we're not defined by what other people think about our life. The Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 1 defined himself as who he was, and it's important for us to understand, because we need to see how we also relate to others and our relationship with God primarily. Paul said in Romans chapter 1, verse 1, he said, Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel of God. So if I ask you who you are, what would you say? There's been a lot of controversy, I know, during this coronavirus about wearing a mask and separation and all these things that we have to make a decision about. And there's a lot of people who want to define you or say, well, you're so-and-so and so-and-so because you do and do not wear a mask, or other things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. But Charlotte and I came to the point to realize that, first of all, our decision-making is not based upon what other people think. Our decision-making is based upon our care for others and our care for one another. Our submission to government authorities has an impact on that, but not totally. But primarily being pleasing to God in what we do and how we make our decisions. God, we just want to do what you tell us to do and show us to do as best we know how, and walk there. And so when we define our life, the Apostle Paul was accused of being mad before Festus because of his life had been transformed by his coming to a personal relationship with God on the road to Damascus. And so they tried to define him. And I know Barnabas was called an encourager. His name means one who encourages. And so his life was really defined by his own name. And so I ask you, how do you see yourself in the scheme of things? How do you define yourself? And make sure you're true, first of all, in your relationship with God, in what you do. And if you try to please everybody and let other people define who you are, you're going to be in deep trouble, because that is so varied. I remember when we walked across America before I left, I was accused of being mentally unstable. And see, there were those who thought that this was really crazy, but because it didn't fit into the mold of what other people thought a Christian ought to do. And so all throughout my life, my brother thought I was crazy for being in El Salvador during the war. And he thought I was going to get killed down there. Well, I had other priorities. I was in the middle of God's will, and God was blessing. People were being saved. And I remember telling him that, I'd rather be in the war in El Salvador in God's will than in my den safely, seemingly, out of God's will. And so how other people define us is one thing, but how God sees us, that's what's important. So who are you today? Define your life as who you are. But remember, how are you in your relationship with God? That's what's really important. Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel of God. Now let me ask you the question today. Who are you? God bless you. Have a great day.